Good evening and welcome to News Sources, the only platform where opinion is entertained and facts are interrogated. My name is Dennis Onsarigo. First, the highlights at this hour.
Wale wengine wote ambao wanafikiria watapitia hiyo barabara wajue ya kwamba hiyo ndio itakuwa dawa.
I refuse to be used as a scapegoat. I refuse to be used as the rag.
Hata huyu baba ukiona peleka salamu ya baba.
Good evening. A witness has told a Mombasa court that samples he randomly took from 10 out of 250 bags seized on a ship in July 2014 and said to be ferrying heroin tested positive for gypsum, which he says is a legal component for cement. President Uhuru Kenyatta personally witnessed the destruction of the ship and the drugs. Did the government lie to Kenyans? That's where we are starting off tonight, and we are joined by Robin Toskin, Nyambega Gisesa, an investigative journalist, and our very own Roslyn Obala. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
But ladies and gentlemen, first things first, let's listen in to President Uhuru Kenyatta's speaking after he destroyed the drugs in Mombasa.
Pamoja na ile madawa ambayo ilishikwa, kesho tutaenda kule kwa baharini, hiyo meli tuitoboe, irudi chini na hiyo takataka yake yote, na wale wengine wote ambao wanafikiria watapitia hiyo barabara wajue ya kwamba hiyo ndio itakuwa dawa.
Toskin, this is the president speaking about the destruction of drugs. I earlier said that he had spoken after the destruction of the drugs, but indeed he was speaking before the drugs were destroyed. He went ahead and witnessed personally the destruction of these drugs. A witness in Mombasa comes out and says what they destroyed could have been cement. Your thoughts?
Really, for those who have been following the whole issue about drugs in Kenya, and between Kenya and South America and the United States, and even some countries in Europe, will tell you that it is a serious crime, it's a serious thing that is happening along the Kenyan coast. And with this witness now coming forward and testifying, and that is a very serious thing because he's testifying under law. He knows the repercussions, but then he's out there saying really that this tested, that this gypsum in it, and that for me is a tough or a strong indictment of our security agencies, including now the head of state, who has been talking tough, but then we haven't seen any action being taken.
Nyambega, was the president lied to, or did he lie to us?
I think from the point that the ship was destroyed, there was quite the president wasn't very clear, neither of the investigators, because if you remember that there was a court case and then the ship was destroyed when there was a court case, and then the judge had ordered that the ship should not be destroyed. Yeah, so I think the president might have been misled.
Roslyn, this is a president who defied a court order and instructed that we destroy the drugs as they were, and it was a public display of might, so to say. Did the president take us for a ride?
I wouldn't say the president took us for a ride, because remember, if we go back history, where Kenya has come from in terms of fighting drugs, this is something that has been a menace, especially in the coast region. So for the president, and if you look at the words he used, you could see a determination of a person to address an issue that has affected the country. But you might find that the information that he was given, either the officers did not give him the right information, or he was acting based on the need and the public interest at that particular time.
Toskin, this is the president of the Republic of Kenya, the man who has the custody of all information, including yours, where you sit.
Of course.
He could not have been misled, as Roslyn is trying to tell us.
I don't think he was misled. I think there are powerful forces that always maybe
more powerful than the government of the day.
They could be powerful. We've seen it happen all across the world or around the world. We've seen how governments in Colombia, Mexico, and name it, Venezuela, how powerful governments have been rendered powerless, in the face of these powerful people. But then I think it behoves the president of this country, to listen to every detail that is coming out. If there was a court order, I think the president should have sat back and then asked many more questions so that they deal with it. And then destroying that kind of evidence in the face of a judge saying, look, you don't have to destroy that ship, because investigations later on could even unravel so many other things. So I think the president erred in going ahead in that public display to try and show us that he's acting. It's always important to preserve evidence for future use.
Nyambega should take responsibility, because of course you come from the same region as Geoffrey.
See, I think as a country, we haven't reached that state in which we recognize the powerful nature of dry cartels. For if you look at the historical in Kenya, other than the death of Ibrahim Akasha, that was in 2000, we have never had an other known drug lord who is not a politician. Of course, in the year 2014, sometimes back, some 6 individuals were named as drug lords in Kenya, but there is no single action that has ever been taken on some of them. And in fact, one of the most interesting things is that I think in February, in January 2014, when NACADA cleared Aaron Mwau from the allegations, but we know from law, being a journalist and a student of law, the law does not allow NACADA to clear anyone from drug, being someone dealing in drug. So in Kenya, we have never internalized, we have never sat down and thought, hey, how powerful are these dry cartels? Because if you read that Interpol reports and the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, you discover that Kenya is a major route for drug traffickers, especially in the southern route. In the history of, if you study the issues of drug trafficking, we have 2 major drug trafficking routes in the world. We have the Balkan region, that's Turkey and Iran, and then the southern region where drugs come from Afghanistan, they pass through the port of Mombasa, and then they are distributed all over these other parts.
Nyambega, we had a chance of seizing drugs worth $1 billion shillings or so. We went ahead and destroyed something else. According to this witness, the case is still in court.
Yes.
Rosalind, how do you get your head around it? I mean, especially as media, we widely reported about this.
Maybe just to deviate from my colleagues, when they said this is just one witness, and this is a case that is in court, and this thing happened in 2014. Maybe what the public is getting to know, there is more than meets the eye. Maybe what was destroyed might have not been the drugs, but maybe what these people tested, they might have been given a different sample from what we know. So I think let us not take it in the face value. We as journalists, we can still dig in to get exactly what we are looking here, because it might be drugs, at the same time it might be something else.
Let's talk about something else. This is not the first time that President Uhuru Kenyatta is presiding over an event that at the end of the day raises serious questions. When terrorists attacked residents of Lamu County, the president and his deputy accused the opposition of being behind the attacks and even went ahead to charge in court a sitting governor. Is the president in charge, or is out there to charge others? Toskin.
The disappointing thing is that for the person that has all the authority on this land, to turn around and then act as if it is a political issue, yet we are confronted by a criminal issue, is really not good. Because going by the president, that we've had agencies that communicate the kind of intelligence the government wants to have, and then no action is taken, that actually becomes a big problem, because we don't have any other person to turn to. We've had someone like Marwa, the Mombasa County police boss at that time, or commissioner, coming out with proper evidence and telling these guys to investigate this, and then nothing is done. So I think the president there needs to come out and then stand for the people of this country, because we've given him the mandate for him to protect us.
Are the president's handlers letting him down? I mean, they lied to him that local politicians were behind the Lamu attacks. It turns out that there was a video done by Al-Shabaab. This was an Al-Shabaab attack on Kenyan citizens at the coast. Now he goes out there, destroys an entire ship of quote-unquote drugs, and then there's a witness in court who is saying out of the 250 samples I tested, some of them were gypsum. which is a component of cement. Where do you put your head in this?
You see, it's very important to know that every person you meet describes Uhuru Kenyatta as a very good person, as a nice man.
Yeah.
That's the description. But once it comes into taking decisive actions, I think I'll totally give him an E in that. For instance, I used to think that the destruction of the ship in Mombasa, this is something which was costing almost 8 billion shillings. This was the most decisive decision he had ever made in his presidency. But since then, there have been a lot of issues in government. You remember the issue with the standard rail gauge line? That's one of the instances. You remember the issue of the sacking of the former police commissioner, Itera, and the rest. So our president has not been quite decisive. And this is very bad, because if you look at the history of this country, look at Moi. Moi was very decisive, especially on the issue of drugs that we are facing now. In the early 1980s and 1990s, remember the issue of Monyoko, soil erosion. Yeah, Monyoko. Yeah. So, and President Moi was extremely very decisive. But Uhuru, I don't know what's happening to Uhuru. I don't know whether he listens to so many people. He also happens to be the president with the highest number of advisors
I mean, the president has a very good PR machinery, you will agree with me. I mean, if the president is out there to do something, he does it very well. Yeah. He launches everything and anything. How can they mislead him, Roslyn? And how can media, at the end of the day, mislead an entire nation on these issues?
I think there are two sides to this issue. One, we are under new constitution, where we have the presidential system. And look at, these are some of the institutions like the security agencies. It's an independent institution, as opposed to what we used to have in the past regime, whereby the president will appoint the commissioner of police and appoint the CID and all that. We can see now it is a public process that goes through. And you remember what we went through when we were having issues with the former IG Kimayo, just to remove him, and we had to do some amendments in parliament to have him out of office. And when the issue of Lamu came into the house, that is in parliament, the MPs turned against each other, and it was Accord and Jubilee issue, whereby we lost the main reason what exactly happened, and it was about Accord and Jubilee thing. So because of this, again, we are also losing. We are doing more politics as opposed to policy and protecting our people. So in this case, as opposed to holding the president, what about the opposition?
Exactly.
Why do they exchange? Instead, we need to see, they need to ask the government, what are you doing? What are our security agencies doing? Because this is not the first time they've goofed.
Ask.
They goof every single day. They give us statements.
Tuskin, something is burning.
Yeah, opposition cannot ask because cannot ask those questions, because the money that comes from drug trafficking is actually funding the campaigns, the political campaigns across the spectrum. So for you to expect even the opposition or the government to question all those things, it becomes a problem, because look at the way our campaigns have been becoming expensive every time it comes around. Where do these guys get all this money?
It is very saddening when we accept in public that indeed our leaders are benefiting from drug money. Then where is our country headed? If we are relying on drug money.
Where are we headed? This country relies on
in
drug
government
money.
and they are also in opposition. That's all we know, even if they are just allegations. But then they cannot be acted on, because in a way they are funding these campaigns.
So Nyambega, what Tuskin is saying in short is we are not likely to stem the tide of drug trafficking in this country in the near future.
No, we are, and we have not, actually have not been serious on the same, because I remember sometimes last year, the former Nakada chairman, Mduto, he said that at least 5 governors and that 7 MPs are involved in drug trade. Nothing has ever happened to them. And if you look like the only list in the recent past is the one that which the US banned six Kenyans, among them 4 politicians. Out of this, the 4 politicians who are banned because they are related from the US because they deal in drugs. One of them is most likely said to be the president in 2022.
So what I can see, this country is used to dropping names. You find we keep on dropping names, but those names you don't follow to conclusion.
Let's move on. The Kenyan government seized cocaine with a street value of 6.5 billion shillings in 2004. The drugs were later destroyed in a public display of might by the Kibaki administration, surprisingly. Several court cases surrounding the seizure were badly bungled, and it is believed some of the drugs were diverted. Are we fighting drug trafficking in this country?
We're not fighting because actually you are saying it's the Kenyan government, but if you go to the records, I think it's been foreign agencies that have been identifying these things in the high seas. We've seen the Australian government, coming out and saying, look, this is what we've seized. Guys, can you act on this because it is within the Kenyan territory?
But they gave them this and they destroyed something else.
Nothing happened. And that is why we are saying that we are disappointed that the government, despite not investing much in courts, they are given evidence. The U.S. government and even the UN agency on drugs and crime, the office, have come out and given out detailed evidence, and then we don't act on it, and which tells you really that we lack the political goodwill. And why? It's because the people, the major players, are within the political spectrum, and they are funding campaigns on both sides, which becomes really difficult for us.
And I think the biggest question is how much of a drug problem do we have in this country, or what we have remnants of drugs that are on transit. That's what people in Mombasa consume and parts of this country. I don't think it's a major problem for government to come out.
It's the drug issue in Kenya is a major problem. It's just that as a nation we have not taken it seriously. I can give you examples just in the city. If you go to Kabete, near Kabete police station, on the other side, there's an active group of people who deal in heroin and cocaine, and they are known by the cops. But each and every morning, the cops go for 300 shillings from the sellers of those drugs. If you go to Githurai 45, just behind the Kasmat supermarket, there's an active group of people, young people in the hundreds, who are consuming those drugs.
Mbega, these are end consumers, these are peddlers. Yeah. Let's talk about people who own ships. Yeah. Ships that were transporting these things. A government comes up, destroyed an entire ship. They don't tell us where the ship was coming from, where the ship was heading to.
The people who own those ships are in government, or they are dealing with the people who are in government. It's not easy to traffic drugs without the assistance of either the government or the National Police Service.
Dennis, I think our system just needs to be relooked at, because remember, even when Ombeta was in Mombasa with the court order, we didn't even know the owner of the ship, but we had a court order. How do you get a court order from courts without knowing the owner of the ship?
Ladies and gentlemen, I'll have to remind you that I think 2 years ago, before Uhuru Kenyatta became president, during Kibaki's time, a chopper, a police chopper, flew to Nairobi, 100 kgs of heroin. And Mombasa had competent courts to handle such a matter. Yeah. It had a warehouse where these exhibits could have been kept. I'll surprise you that we have no idea what happened to that case. The drugs were brought to Nairobi in a public display of might again, landed at Wilson Airport. Some fellas were arrested. Later we discovered these fellas had been issued guns by the Kenyan government. Something must be wrong, Nyambega.
It's wrong.
See, what's happening is that money raised from drugs will campaign the next elections. If you have been following business stories, you'll discover that in the last 1 year, over 100 Kenyans have bought helicopters. The cheapest helicopter costs about 80 million shillings, and this is a lot of money.
Yeah, I come from where Chemorei, the former police officer, was gunned down in Kitalale, and you on KTN through Jicho Pevu did an extensive report on what happened to him. And being a villager, neighbor of his, there are a lot of stories that really carry some credibility, but then we don't have where to turn to, whereby the people who have come out to try and blow the whistle have been taken out. And that's why we're saying that the government is really not serious on tackling this. And if they are serious, look at what has just happened in athletics. There's been a hue and cry that there's doping among our athletes. The moment the law was enacted, what have we seen? This action, at least there's a name that has been dropped. At least there are 2 or 3 people who have been taken to court. We would like to see the same thing with the drug trafficking, but we are not seeing that. Is that to say that we don't have the enforcement agencies? No, we have them, but then they are sleeping on the job, or
Tashkin, maybe just to support you, I think what is happening, the people who are dealing in drugs are people who are high and mighty.
Yes.
I don't think that the small people there are people who pull strings. And I think that is why maybe the government has had that challenge, because look at it, you confiscate drugs and you can see the process that
Yes.
it goes. At the end of the day, you cannot follow the case to a conclusion. You cannot see where it went.
The question
At the end
people
of the
have been
day,
asking-
lives will be lost along the way.
the question people have been asking is that the president of this country was born in a well-to-do family. He has never lacked anything. And even if he doesn't make it to become the president next year, he still is very comfortable. And that's why we're saying, for him to have been elected, people expected him to do much more, because there's nothing he will end up losing. Yeah, but he's not doing that.
But Nyambega, you'll agree the president has tried. I mean, sinking an entire ship with drugs.
But he sang an entire ship. We don't know who is
We
the
don't
owner.
know
We don't know
who's
who is
the
the
owner.
owner. We don't know it. In fact, you are being told
And
there
some
is
is
that,
saying it's gypsum.
that the cocaine came from. You are being told that the cocaine allegedly came from
Heroin.
is it Colombia, the heroin, Colombia or Venezuela. That one we don't know. We don't know who owns the ship. And now the most absurd thing that you are being told that it was not even heroin. It was some gypsum used.
It's
some
interesting
for making cement.
to navigate an entire ship
So
on
what-
Kenyan waters, and you don't know where it's coming from and where it's going.
Yeah.
So what I'm asking then is this: what is this that the president has done to fight drug abuse in this country? You remember Nakada during the times of Mturo and my good friend Fazul Mohammed and the others. It was chaos every time. And after Fazul left and now Mturo has left, Aknazao, there's nothing they are doing. The only thing that they are doing is issuing pamphlets to schools that don't abuse drugs.
I think there's something the
Nothing else.
president is doing. I think he appointed John Muthudo to another position again. As
He has appointed him to the Motor Licensing Board.
let's move on, changing gears. The Independent and Electoral Boundaries Commission Chairman Isaac Hassan now says he's ready to oversee the next general elections after Parliament cleared him, after EACC cleared him of any wrongdoing in the Chicken Gate scandal. The commission chair doesn't seem moved or bothered by calls to have the commission sent packing. Is the commission chair here to stay, gentlemen? But before that, let's listen into the former CEO of IEBC, James Oswago, who said he has been thrown under the bus by the EACC.
I refuse to be used as a scapegoat. I refuse to be used as the rag.
I'm not ready to resign. I think it will be a very bad thing to do that. I owe it to the office that I hold and the independence of the institution that I head to ensure that I'm able to withstand all sorts of pressures, all sorts of influences to be able to lead the institution.
Rosalind, you've been extensive on this. Isaac Hassan is now saying it's not about resigning. It's about handling the next general elections. He's been cleared. Is CEO thrown under the bus? He should carry the cross moving forward. Is Isaac Hassan mad or something?
I maybe just to use one word, I think he's drunk with power. Because with all these calls, people, everybody throwing issues at you, at least your conscience should tell you something is not right. As much as he's saying EACC is just a body. EACC the other day cleared Anne Waiguru, but at the end of the day, we saw she had issues. Remember, we've had the song, I will not resign. I would rather die than resign. Amos Kimunya said that. We've seen other leaders say that. But at the end of the day, what happens? They leave the offices. So for Isaac Hassan to say now that he will not resign and will not bow to pressure, is just too early for that.
But this man has a point. He's been cleared by the EACC over Chicken Gate scandal. He did not eat anyone's chicken, Nyambega. This man should be given a chance to oversee the next general election.
You see
I
the
mean,
issue.
with all due respect, the only thing that has been bogging down is this Chicken Gate thing that is insisted over and over again. I did not eat anyone's chicken. EACC has come out and said the chicken was eaten by someone else in the name of Oswago and his friends. Allow him to conduct the next general elections.
You see, the issue for Hassan is not just about the legal aspect of it. You know, you can be cleared by all the courts, but when the public doesn't want you.
Yeah.
If you remember sometimes in the 90s when Chesoni was appointed as the IEBC chairman, as the electoral chief chairman, that time it was known as the ECK.
Yeah.
It was the worst time for any electoral process in Kenya. And this is the same thing that Hassan You know, Hassan, if you go to the Somali communities, they describe Isaac Hassan as one of the most reasonable Somalis in this country. But you must know, you know, the same way that what happened to Saidi Barre in the early 1990s when he had to flee